On this week's Taking the Hill, take a journey with us from Maine to America's most hallowed ground and meet the man whose single act of patriotism has sparked a national institution.
I think it hits a nerve with so many people. People don't want their loved ones to be forgotten.
Hello, I'm Patrick Murphy, and welcome to this special edition of Taking the Hill. Today, we'll devote our entire program to Wreaths Across America, an organization that does extraordinary work. We have veterans in our country. By an act of Congress, today is National Wreaths Across America Day. And that long line of trucks you see over there, they're the men and women of Wreaths Across America entering Arlington National Cemetery. Each year, for the last 23 years, they have come to Arlington to place remembrance wreaths on the markers of veterans who are buried in America's most hallowed ground. This year, tens of thousands of volunteers will place more than 700,000 wreaths in all 50 states, all to fulfill the organization's mission, to remember the men and women who gave their lives for our country, to honor them, and to teach the next generation of Americans something about the price of freedom. It's a story about a small group of individuals can make a huge impact on all of us. And it all starts with one man in the far reaches of down to East Maine. From rural Worcester, the day starts at sunrise in tiny Columbia Falls, Maine, where winter comes early and the peak season for his business is November and December. Worcester is a wreath maker, and he grows the balsam for his wreaths on the land that spills down the hill from his driveway as far as the eye can see.
I leave the house by 5:45, and almost every morning I go to the same little restaurant to eat breakfast.
Morrill is one of the largest manufacturers of wreaths in America, and the only one that grows his own balsam. But Worcester is best known not for his considerable business acumen, but for an idea which all started when he was a newsboy during the morning edition of the local paper he still reads every day.
I was a paper boy for the Bangor Daily News back when I was 12 years old. And the news ran a contest, and if you gained a certain number of new customers, you became eligible for a trip to Washington. I was one of the news carriers at the time that went on that trip. One of the things that really stuck with me is Arlington National Cemetery. I just was taken by that. I never forgot it. I thought about Arlington when we had the wreaths left over back in '92. That year we had a very good year, but we just bought too many wreaths. There was about 5,000, give or take a few hundred. It was an entire trailer load of wreaths. I didn't want to throw them away, and I thought about Arlington because of that trip. And so we took those wreaths to Arlington. It made such an impact. I can't believe, how that looked and how it was so well received and so on, that I said, we're never going to stop doing that. We're going to give those 5,000 wreaths away every year. And it was just our family's personal gift to the military. No fanfare, no nothing.
We overdo Christmas.
Morrill, his wife Karen, and their kids continue to bring 5,000 wreaths to Arlington National Cemetery every year for 15 years, until one day, a photographer snapped an iconic image that changed everything.
And he stumbled on the area that we had just placed the wreaths. And he took this photograph and put it on the internet with a poem, and it just went around the world. We literally had millions of people that saw that worldwide. I'm not great on computers, that's for sure, but I had like 6,000 to 7,000 emails, people sending us money and everything else, and we sent it all back because we weren't able to take it. That's how Wreaths Across America started.
After the photograph generated national attention, the Worcesters created a nonprofit organization to allow what had been a family tradition to grow into a national institution. Today, Wreaths Across America has a much bigger footprint. but it's still headquartered in tiny Columbia Falls, and it still seeks to teach the value of freedom, one story at a time.
I love what we do at Wreaths Across America because families take their kids out and they touch something living, and they give this gift and they read a name and they make a connection. It's a hand and a heart and a story and a real connection. You know, as near as we can tell, about 600,000 people will go into 1,000 cemeteries all over the country and read the names on those graves and teach their kids. You take people one at a time and they get it, and then they pass it on to somebody else. And we don't lose many people because once you do this, you get it, and you get how important it is.
When we come back, how do you make and move more than 60 tractor-trailer loads of balsam wreaths from one tiny town in Maine in just a few weeks? Right after this. Welcome back to Taking the Hill, the special edition on Wreaths Across America, whose thousands of volunteers are now placing wreaths at the grave sites of veterans here at Arlington. That same gesture of respect is happening in cemeteries all across our country, more than over 700,000 wreaths in all. This annual ritual takes precise planning, hard work, and almost 3 million pounds of fresh balsam. When you're in the wreath business like Moral Worcester, it's all about the balsam. And the almost 3 million pounds of it needed to make the wreaths all has to be cut by hand. It's called tree tipping, cutting from the newest growth from the branches without damaging the tree.
What you want is at least 3 years of growth if you can. Okay, right there. Okay, the tipping right here. You always leave enough green though, so that it's going to come back. 3 years time, you come back here and you'll tip the same piece again.
For 6 weeks a year, the population of Columbia Falls swells as the Worcester Wreath Company brings its seasonal workers to tip trees and make their wreaths. It's labor-intensive, hard work on rugged land, and with short daylight hours, there is no time to waste.
That's pallet number 41 on the 18th of November. Yeah.
Spread out all across the Worcester land, there are parcels devoted to veterans and their families. A perpetual Christmas tree stands as a tribute to veterans of the Battle of the Bulge, and nearby there's a grove of trees where families are encouraged to come and claim a tree for a lost veteran.
You can pick any tree you want, and it doesn't matter what the tree is or how far away it is. When you pick the tree, you take and you put your chain of the dog tag in close to the trunk of the tree so that when we tip the trees, we're not going to hurt the dog tag or the chain.
I was fortunate enough to pick out a tree just for my dad and to put his dog tags on the tree and a red, white, and blue ribbon. And every 3 years, those trees will be tipped. So it's exciting for me because, you know, in the years to come, the wreaths that we place here are actually going to be from my dad's tree in Maine.
Inside the manufacturing plants, workers play a game of beat the clock as they rush to make hundreds of thousands of wreaths in just weeks. That's just part of the challenge. Those wreaths still need to be delivered from rural Maine to their locations all over the country. And for that, Wreaths Across America gets a huge helping hand from America's trucking industry, with truckers donating their time, equipment, and money to deliver the wreaths to all 50 states. The effort is spearheaded by the Truckload Carriers Association.
About 1 in 13 people employed by the trucking industry, and that surprises some people. So your typical truck driver is probably one of your neighbors, and you may not know what he does, but a lot of people don't realize the emotion isn't just for us that are connected here, but I was in the convoy several years back, and our lead driver, the first truck coming through into Arlington, got on the CB and said, "May have some safety issues here, I'm having trouble seeing." He was crying so hard. As a truck driver, when he pulled into Arlington National Cemetery and the military was lined up saluting him and the other truck drivers, it was something that he'll never forget, and he continues to talk about that, and it touches every one of us that were on that channel listening. It's a tough career, and having that opportunity to be perceived in such an honorable way, it touched all of us, and I think he spoke for every one of us, because we were all having some safety issues, getting the Kleenexes out and making sure we could see out the windshield. But it's not what you may have thought about the typical truck driver.
Wreaths Across America also gets a huge boost from Walmart, who not only donates cash to sponsor Wreaths, but hundreds of thousands of dollars in trucking and logistics, this year sending dozens of trucks from Maine to Arlington from its private fleet.
Anything we can do to help Wreaths Across America out and offset those expenses is a big deal to us. And I think the act of laying a memorial wreath is a great way to honor those that have given so much for the freedoms that we enjoy here in the United States. We wouldn't have a Walmart, we wouldn't have a Washington, D.C. if it weren't for those veterans.
When we come back, we'll meet the Grand Marshal of this year's convoy, 85-year-old Edith Knowles, and see her extraordinary tribute to her brother, lost 70 years ago at the Battle of the Bulge. Right after. Welcome back to Taking the Hill. It's the 150th anniversary of Arlington National Cemetery, and it's Wreaths Across America's goal this year to place a wreath on every marker, more than over 220,000. In the 23 years that this group has been coming here, they have never been able to raise enough money to cover every section of Arlington. And when they left Maine earlier this week, they were still trying to raise enough money to get the job done.
We'll see you in Arlington.
After countless hours of preparation, it's finally time for the Wreaths to begin their long journey from Columbia Falls to Arlington. There'll be many ceremonial stops along the way, including Liberty Island for the installation of the Freedom Wreath. As the final boxes are loaded, Merle Worcester closes one last door.
This is a special load. This is the one that contains the wreath that's going to the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, guys, we're ready up front, ready to roll.
Leading the convoy is this year's Grand Marshal, 85-year-old Edith Knowles. It was December 21st, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, when Edith's brother, Corporal Buddy Thorne, gave his life. Buddy's fearless and selfless heroics on a cold, snowy battlefield in Belgium earned him our nation's highest military decoration, the Congressional Medal of Honor. But for Edith, then 16 years old, it's that stolen holiday 70 years ago which makes this time of year bittersweet.
The last letter that I got from my brother was how he wanted to be home for Christmas. That was written to me in November, and Bud was killed the 21st of December, 4 days before Christmas.
Many Christmases have come and gone since Bud's passing. A middle school now stands in the farmland where Edith and Bud played together as kids. Edith has spent a lifetime trying to pass what she learned from her brother about freedom to others. And when she saw that iconic photograph of Arlington, she knew she had found kindred spirits.
When I first saw the pictures of Arlington Cemetery with all the Christmas wreaths, I had to find out about it, because that was just mind-boggling to see that. I wanted to be part of it.
Edith, how are you?
Edith shared her passion for the project with her longtime close friend and Jersey Mike's founder, Peter Cancro. Together, the two are helping Wreaths Across America reach the hearts of millions.
The Wreaths Across America this year. One day, Edith walks in and said she found out about this organization from Maine called Wreaths Across America. And I was very interested. Our mission statement as a company is giving, making a difference in someone's life. We give to give. And it's not for the tax breaks, it's not for any reason, but because it's part of our culture, it's part of what we do.
Peter has been very instrumental in helping us visit many more grave sites than we wouldn't have been able to do if it wasn't for the generous donations that he personally and all his stores have contributed.
Placing the wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier, I was asked to do that. I said to myself, this is a life moment. and how strong the feelings were, emotions for me. You know, for so many of our lost soldiers and the cause that they gave was just incredible.
As a tribute to her brother, Bud, Edith wanted to find the courage to overcome a huge fear, just as he had done, and soar to new heights, literally. With the help of the All Veterans Group, the same skydiving team which jumps with former President Bush, 85-year-old Edith Knowles took to the skies.
That's how we do it in the South. We hug people, right?
Yes, I'm not only doing it for Bud, but also to hopefully ask others, if I'm doing this, what are you going to do to try to help the fallen and remember and honor and teach the young children?
Look at that.
On Wednesday, a special wreath-laying ceremony took place in the shadow of one of the nation's most iconic symbols, the Statue of Liberty. With New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in attendance, Edith placed a medal in honor of her brother on the 12-foot, 300-pound symbol of our freedom.
It's a great honor to know that people like you and the leaders of Wreaths across America will continue to remind all of us of the service, the sacrifice, and the enduring warmth that comes from remembering.
When we come back, an historic milestone for our veterans and the organization that honors them right after this. Welcome back to Taking the Hill. With an amazing last-minute effort, Wreaths Across America was able to raise enough money to cover all of Arlington National Cemetery, the first time the group has been able to honor every veteran here in the same year. It is something the group has now resolved to do every year. And when you listen to the people who are truly touched by a simple act of laying a wreath, it is clear why it is so important to so many.
I was carrying a wreath into a location for a special request, and as I walked by, there was a gentleman standing looking down at a gravestone, and as I walked by, he stopped me and said, you know, excuse me, could you tell me what's all these wreaths here? And so I stopped and told him about Wreaths Across America and what we've done, and he looked down at me and he said, what about my son? And I looked down, and he's looking at a grave where his son was, and it just happened that those extra wreaths that had been placed ended where his son's stone was. And I said, I'm sorry, you know, we only have so many wreaths, and we just didn't have enough to cover it. I made it a promise to myself that we're going to cover them all. We don't want to have that person come in here and not seeing a wreath on their grave of their loved ones. A lot of people think that the government does this. The government doesn't. We rely on individual sponsorships and donations from corporations to help us put these wreaths down.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about my son, Christopher Stone Cipher. When he decided to enlist in the Army to become a Ranger, he was in Ranger School when 9/11 happened. He called and said that he had stepped off into a ditch on night maneuvers and sprained his ankle severely. He tried to tough it out for 4 more days without telling anybody until he couldn't put his boot on because his ankle was so swollen. So they sent him back to the Ranger Battalion with a cast on. But when the call went up on October 9th for his battalion to be in the fray, he cut his cast off so that he would be with his buddies and help protect them. I was up watching CNN, and the little scroll that goes across the TV said 2 Rangers killed aboard a helicopter crash. I thought, oh, those poor families. Not knowing that the next day when the man in the green uniform showed up, I was one of those 2 families. My son gave me a different journey in life. I was hoping for grandchildren, And I got this journey, which is called being a Gold Star mother. I fell into the volunteer vortex and started to do things like the newsletter. But my very first experience was being one of those volunteers who showed up at Arlington about 5 years ago, waiting for a couple of hours just to sort of get a wreath and be a part of the whole experience. And there was such a quiet, dedicated energy that day of people just waiting to get maybe 1 or 2 wreaths to take to a headstone to place and to honor the sacrifice and the memory of these fine veterans who were buried at Arlington. And I watched this mother and a little boy place a wreath on one of the stones. And I remember thinking, someday when the words in his name are all worn off, there still will be someone who will come by and pay their respects to my son's memory. And this is the impact and the reason why I continue to work with Wreaths Across America. In order to find oneself, you must lose yourself in helping others.
Wreaths Across America will be done here soon, but their work will continue all year, reaching out to schools with educational programs to remember, honor, and teach, and the beginning of a long process of preparation for next year's journey to Arlington. For my part, I'm headed to Section 60 to see my fellow Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and to place a wreath at the resting place of Marine Travis Mannion from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. For Taking the Hill, I'm Patrick Murphy. Thank you for watching.
To get more information on Wreaths Across America and to find out how you can get involved, please visit their website, www.wreathsacrossamerica.org.